Greetings, fellow wordsmiths. Today, we're going to embark on yet another literary journey that delves deep into the editing realm. We'll unravel the mysteries of developmental editing and line editing, two powerful tools in your arsenal to help shape and refine your narrative. So grab your editing glasses and let's dissect the intricacies of these critically important stages of editing. I learned long ago that editing is a multifaceted process, and understanding the distinctions between developmental editing and line editing is like wielding a masterful brushstroke versus a fine-tipped pen, and both are sure to bring out the absolute best in your manuscript. So imagine, if you will, your first draft as a block of marble, waiting to be sculpted into a masterpiece. This is where the developmental editing steps. Take, for example, the initial draft of my forthcoming novel, Blackout, where Jake Bendel's quest is still unfolding in its raw form. All I knew when I started was that I needed 3 acts, each divided into 8 separate sub-acts. That's my secret thriller formula, by the way, which I'll be happy to share with you guys in another video. Just let me know. And there needed to be an attack on the US power grid. Those are the 3 things that I needed to have in the story, in the rough draft. Okay, time for your first tip. Big picture focus. Developmental editing is about the grand vision, the forest, not the trees. So after I had written my initial draft, I studied the overall structure, pacing, and character arcs. Again, in Blackout, this involved, for example, and among many other things, assessing whether Jake's journey was unfolding logically and if each plot point contributed to the overarching narrative. Okay, second tip, character development. In developmental editing, I needed to make sure that I carved out the character's essence, like refining Jake's emotional journey, for example, and making sure that it aligns with the larger plot. For example, does his determination resonate? Is his emotional arc consistent and compelling? Now, let's fast forward to the revised manuscript after the developmental edit. At that point, we transitioned to line editing, a more detailed and intricate process, somewhat akin to adding delicate brushstrokes to a canvas. Tip number 3, fine-tuning the language. Line editing hones in on the language. Check out the sentence level. I worked, for example, to refine every single line of Jake's dialogue with Kavanaugh and Connors to make sure that it's sharp, poignant, and aligns with his character voice. As a side note, this step right here is super important to me. This is exactly why I took several improv classes at the Groundling School in Hollywood. There's this game that they play called New Line, where when you're in the middle of an improv scene, which is usually just you and a partner on a stage, you say a line, and then the teacher kind of randomly calls out, "New line," and you have to, on the fly, come up with something completely original. The teacher might do this 2, 3, 4 or more times, and then for me, this kind of trained my brain to get into the character, the scene, and the emotion. And I found more often than not that the first line that I had written of dialogue was not nearly as good as the later lines. Anyway, when I'm line editing, I cycle through each line of dialogue several times until I find something that resonates. And I highly recommend you do the same. Don't just stop at one line of dialogue and call it a day. See if there are opportunities there to improve upon the line of dialogue. All right, tip number 4. Style and tone. Pay attention to style and tone. Is the narrative consistent, for example? In Blackout, line editing polished the narrative, maintaining a nice little balance between the tension-filled scenes and the emotional depth of the characters. Anyway, after going through these 2 cycles of edits, you'll find that excerpts from your original draft versus the ones in the final edited version are usually completely different. Kind of like a raw slab of marble versus a polished statue. The developmental edit shapes the story's foundation, while the line edit adds finesse, creating a nice, harmonious narrative that will captivate your readers. As I'm often heard saying, sculpt the grand, refine the details. Happy editing.